This tutorial is for 5th grade, Module 3, Lesson 7. In this lesson, we're going to use fraction models to help us solve word problems. The first problem says George weeded 1/6 of the garden and Summer weeded some too. When they were finished, 2/3 of the garden still needed to be weeded. What fraction of the garden did Summer weed? I'm going to write down some of the information off to the side here to keep track of what's going on in this problem. Well, first of all, we know that George weeded 1/6 of the garden, so I'm just going to write that down to remember that. Now, Summer weeded some of the garden, but we don't know how much. What we do know is that 2/3 of the garden still needs to be weeded. So here's the 3 things that I know. I'm going to start by drawing a fraction model. And I'm going to show the portion that George weeded. So I will divide this into 6. And I'm going to shade in 1/6. So that's George. I need to show the 2/3 that still needs to be weeded, because then what's left over would be the part that Summer weeded. But in order to show 2/3 on this fraction model, I need to change my 2/3 into 6 so they have the same denominator. If I think about that, I'm going to draw this off to the side. If I have 2/3 and I divide that in 2, that gives me 6, and I can see that 2/3 is the same thing as 4/6. So I'm going to shade in 4/6 to show what still needs to be weeded. I'm going to show that in a different color. So the red portion will be the part that still needs to be weeded. So there's 4/6. We'll say that needs weeding. And that is 2/3 of the garden, which is the same as 4/6. From there, I can see I have one portion left, and that's the piece that Summer weeded. So George weeded 1/6. There's 2/3 or 4/6 that still needs to be weeded, and then Summer weeded 1/6 as well. So Summer weeded 1/6 of the garden. Let's look at another problem. This one says Jill spent 1/4 of her money on a pack of pens and 1/2 of her money on a pack of markers. What fraction of her money is left? I'm going to start with an answer statement with a blank for the final answer. We'll say Jill has blank of her money left, and I know that that answer has to be in the form of a fraction. I'm going to start with a fraction model that represents all of Jill's money. So we'll say this is all of her money. If I go back to the problem, she spent 1/4 of it on the pens. I'm going to divide that into 4ths. And we'll show that she spent 1/4 on the pens. Then she spent 1/2 of her money on the pack of markers. If I think of 1/2, I'm going to show that in 4ths. I know that 1/2 is the same as 2/4. So I'm going to shade in 2/4 to represent what she spent on the markers. The remaining portion then is what Jill has left. So each of these is 4ths, so she has 1/4 of her money left. Let's look at one more problem. This one says Shelby bought a 2-ounce tube of blue paint. She used 2/3 of an ounce to paint the water and 3/6 of an ounce to paint the sky. How much paint did Shelby have left? So a couple different ways we can attack this problem. I'm going to start by writing my answer statement. So we'll say Shelby had blank ounces left, and we're going to express that in terms of a fraction. The tricky part for this question is that she has 2 ounces of the blue paint. I'm going to represent each ounce in its own fraction model. So we'll show that the 2 models together represent the 2 ounces, and each model then is 1 ounce. Let's start with the amount of paint that she used for the water. She used 2/3 of an ounce to paint the water. And again, this area model here is 1 ounce, so I'll divide that into 2/3. Here's my thirds, and I'll shade in 2 of those. And that's what she used on the water. Now she used 3/6 of an ounce to paint the sky. I'm going to show that on the next model. And this one I'm going to divide into 6. And she used 3/6 to paint the sky. Now we have 2 sections that show what she has left. But if you notice, this section is 1/3, while this section is 3/6. I can't add these unless they have the same denominator. But I do know that if I divide my thirds in half, that will give me 6. Let me do that in a different color. So if I take each of these thirds and split them down the middle, you can see that this now has 6 pieces, and the 1/3 is equal to 2/6, which I can now add to my 3/6, and I have 2/6 plus 3/6 is 5/6, and that tells me that Shelby had 5/6 of an ounce of paint left.